It's bigger on the inside. iPhone SE packs almost all the power and features of the iPhone 6s into a package as small and affordable than the iPhone 5s it replaces. It's something a passionate group of 4-inch iPhone fans have been waiting not so patiently for since Apple made the flagships big and bigger in 2014. So, is the iPhone SE everything they've been waiting for? I used a 4-inch iPhone from when Apple introduced iPhone 5 in 2012 until the company introduced iPhone 6 Plus in 2014. Since then, I've always kept one handy for testing, and I switched back to it for a week or so earlier this month so I could reacquaint myself with it in anticipation of the SE. In other words, I'm familiar with how the size and shape feels, how the internet and apps look at the smaller scale. Little of that changes here. The chamfered edges are matte rather than polished. The 6000 series aluminum has a stainless steel Apple logo inset iPhone 6s style on the back, and there's subtle SE branding beneath it. With iPhone SE, what you gain in on-the-go usability, you do lose in display real estate. At 4 inches, you can't fit and see anywhere nearly as much content on an SE as you can on the 1334 by 750 iPhone 6s, or the enormous by comparison 1920 by 1080 iPhone 6s Plus. You don't get as much interface, you don't get as much text, and you obviously don't get the Plus's 2-column view and landscape. What you do get is a phone you don't have to juggle or resort to reachability mode to use. That's especially useful for when you're walking around, carrying things, or simply hurrying about your day. You also don't get 3D touch. That's the pressure-sensitive technology found on Apple's iPhone 6s. It's a disappointing omission, even though iPhone SE is technically a special edition iPhone 5s rather than a shrunken iPhone 6s. It won't matter to some, but to others it'll be a deal breaker, or at least make it a tougher decision for those who really want both. iPhone SE is powered by Apple's custom A9 system on a chip. All that silicon behind so few pixels results in what can only be likened to an F1 race car experience, or maybe a Superleggera or a 911R. I digress. Thanks to the integrated M9 coprocessor, you also get the same low-power motion sensing as you do on the iPhone 6s, as well as Hey Siri, even when unplugged. That makes it super convenient to control your iPhone SE simply with the power of your voice. Storage starts at 16GB, which will no doubt have tech reviewers rolling their collective eyeballs so hard. For mainstream customers though, the 64GB model should be the go-to. It's really hard to test that early on since a fresh install isn't what most people use, and restoring from backup causes a bunch of radio and processor overhead. I'll be keeping an eye on it though, and will update with my findings, including whether or not I can keep up with sustained Facebook drain. iPhone SE's updated 12-megapixel iSight camera offers both. There's also 1080p video at 60 frames per second and 4K at 30 frames per second. Apple's fingerprint identity sensor is still first generation, but there's an NFC radio now, which means Apple Pay in any country and at any retailer that supports it. Enhancing iPhone SE hardware is iOS 9.3. In addition to everything released last fall, there are new features like Night Shift, the ability to lock notes, greater personalization for Apple News, recommended apps in health, and CarPlay now has Apple Music's new and For You sections, as well as Nearby for maps. iPhone SE is available for $399 for 16GB and $499 for 64GB. With new payment options, that can be less than a few fancy cups of coffee a month, at least in the US. I'll be ordering the 64GB Rose Gold. I don't think I'll be staying at this size for anything more than a few weeks, but I'm thrilled that this is pretty much the not-so-secret love child of the 6S and 5S. I suspect for many of you, Apple had you at A9, 12 megapixels, 4K, Apple Pay, and a 4-inch iPhone. If even 10 to 20% of iPhone owners have been waiting on a smaller iPhone to upgrade, that's tens of millions of now very happy customers.